Hello everyone, GoldenNova here, and it's time for the monthly custom card showcase. A lot of the people in my community love crafting cards, so as a way to give back to all of those who support my work here, I give my patrons a little challenge to build around, and then I give them a grade on how they did based on a variety of factors. And the ones I find most interesting, I show off to all of you. This time around, in honor of the recent release of Duelist, I'm seeing what additional support people would like to see for the archetypes included in that set. Whether they want to amp up a powerful archetype, or give the underdog themes the support they deserve, all of it is fair game. And now, you'll get to see them in action during the August 2025 Custom Card Showcase. Real quick before we get started, one of the many themes to cover out of Doom of Dimensions is DDs, and I need your help to cover it. Ever since I started working on this channel full-time, my Patreon has had a goal where if I get 200 patrons, I would cover the theme, and now seems like as good a time as any to accomplish that goal. If you have $1 to spare each month, please consider supporting me over on Patreon or right here as a YouTube member. I'll be counting both, because it really does make a huge difference here. Not only do higher tiers get you early access to videos and to parts of my Discord, it also means I'd have more money to hire editors, which would mean I'd have more time to do other outrageous things. It's no exaggeration that if just 1% of my audience gave a single dollar, I'd never have to worry about a video underperforming ever again, and I could invest in a lot more lore content. Turns out that stuff is pretty risky. Thank you all for your time, and now, let's get to the explaining. First up, we've got something just about anyone can get behind: giant robots! Super Quant's got a big buff this set by introducing the Evil Ranger Black Layer as well as their own companion creature. But strangely enough, no mech beast was released alongside it. While that's basically guaranteed to show up in a future set, Sir Knight JCB is taking the initiative with their own imagining of what that might look like. Super Quantal Mech Beast Fenrath is a rank 7 Dark Machine Xyz monster with 2300 attack and 2500 defense, requiring 2 level 7 monsters as material. It can't attack unless it has material, and once per turn, you can attach a Super Quantum monster from your hand or field to this card as material. That's pretty standard stuff for the Mech Beast line, but once per turn, you can detach a material from this card, then target a face-up monster on the field and attach it to this card as material. Then, if you activated this effect in response to a card or effect activation, you can, immediately after this effect resolves, special summon a Super Quantal Mech Tyrant Brutus from your extra deck using this card as material. It's treated as an Xyz summon, and you transfer this card's materials to the summoned monster. Now, that may sound strange to add that kind of clause onto an ignition effect that's not a quick one, but that's thankfully been accounted for, because it becomes a quick effect if this card has Super Quantum Black Layer as material. This cleverly makes it so that any rank 7 deck can still use Fenrath as a way to scoop up opposing monsters, but it only reaches its true potential if piloted by its chosen wielder. Though, once again, that is a pretty common trope among the mech beasts. I also like that it leans into the big joke right now that Black Layer bears a striking resemblance to Kashtira Fenrir, not just having a similar looking helmet, but having the level and battle stat line to match. This hasn't confirmed anything, but for now it makes for a great Easter egg. As for the monster we have before us, it's hard to argue that it isn't a solid addition to any deck that can house it. Not only does this give any rank 7 deck the means to remove monsters with a non-destruction twist, and in a way that'll never cause it to run out of material, playing it on theme means it's a gateway to an even stronger monster we'll cover in just a bit. Or, hey, just keep Fenrath around for repeatable interactions over and over again. It is a hungry little machine after all, and it loves wolfing down its meals. Super Quantal Mech Tyrant Brutus is a rank 8 Dark Machine Xyz monster with 2800 attack and 2000 defense, requiring 3 level 8 monsters as material, though once per turn, you can also Xyz summon this card using a Super Quantal Mech Beast Fenrath you control, transferring its materials to this card. This card can make an additional attack during each battle phase for each equipped card equipped to it, and once per turn, during the main phase as a quick effect, you can detach a material from this card to equip one other face-up monster on the field to this card as an equipped card that gives it 400 3400 attack, and can equip a maximum of 2 cards this way. And if this card is sent from the field to the grave while it has Super Quantum Black Lair as material, you can special summon a Super Quantum Black Lair from your graveyard. Creator's note here, the boost was made with these exact specifications because a Brutus with 2 equips would have the exact same attack power as King Magnus, while the stealing effect from these past 2 mechs is akin to how Evil Rangers tend to borrow new Zords from the heroes before they can make use of them. All of this comes together to position Tyrant Brutus as the rival to King Magnus. But while it's much easier to summon than the king of the computers, Brutus isn't nearly as strong because it doesn't have a mode that turns it into a giant unaffected monstrosity. But that doesn't mean it's not incredibly powerful in its own right. It can still scoop up monsters as equipped spells, and can attack up to 3 times per turn once it's fully armed. And even that isn't its full power. While it has a cap on how many cards it can attach to itself by its own effect, all it cares about for the multi-attack is any equipped cards. And while my go-to card for situations like this is Stoic Challenge, a card that basically guarantees OTK with Xyz monsters that have a ton of material and multi-attacks, if you're looking for something on theme, Magnus Slayer does the job quite nicely. And despite being a rank 8 monster, it's very easily accessible in rank 7 strategies. While Fenrath's rank up effect basically requires you to have Black Lair as a material, Tyrant Brutus has its own form of the Chaos Xyz evolution condition strapped to it. So any rank 7 strategy can just make Fenrath, scoop up a monster, overlay onto Tyrant Brutus immediately, steal another monster, and then go in for 2 attacks with a 3200 attack monster. The only downside to not having Black Lair as material for this is that it doesn't float into Black Lair when sent from the field to the grave, but that doesn't detract from how strong it is in other aspects. Don't expect this to survive long against a blast from King Magnus's Shuffle into Deck laser, but on all other aspects, its control of darkness is unmatched. You could say it's the brute of all evils. Layer 20, Super Quantal Hijack, the Met King's Dark Soul, is a continuous trap card, and while it's face up on the field, the first time each Super Quantic Xyz monster you control would be destroyed by a battle each turn while it has material, it is not destroyed. Also, your Super Quantal Mech King Great Magnus can't be tributed while it has a Dark Super Quant monster as material, and you can detach from your Super Quantal Mech King Great Magnus that you control a material that is a Super Quantal Mech Beast Xyz monster, and this effect becomes that material's activated effect that includes an effect that detaches a material at activation. And considering how Magna Carrier works to make Magnus, it'll definitely have quite a few of those beasts on hand for effect copying. This card also helps to deter the one weakness that Magnus has, and really that all Towers monsters share. They may be unaffected by other card effects, but nothing is stopping them from being tributed via game mechanics. But with Black Lair and or Fenrath as material, you can win the tokusatsu battle between super robots and kaijus. And of course, the little battle protection is nice to have too. It's also super easy to deploy thanks to the inclusion of Layer 19's mode to set any Super Quant trap card from your deck. An excellent attention to detail, keeping the episode order consistent, by the way. But now it just makes me want the Super Quant anime even more. Look, Konami Animation, I know you're busy with the branded episodes right now, and I would never ask you to stop those ones early. But when you're done with those, we have to talk about something. Layer 21, Magnus vs. Brutus, Super Quantal Showdown, is a counter trap card, and when your opponent activates a card or effect while you control a Super Quantic Xyz monster, negate the activation. Then if you control Super Quantal Mech King Great Magnus or Super Quantal Mech Tyrant Brutus at activation, you can banish that card. You can also banish this card from your grave, and then target a Super Quant monster in your grave, and attach it to a Super Quantal Mech King Great Magnus, or a Super Quantal Mech Tyrant Brutus you control as material. As a way to recharge Magnus, this is fantastic, as we ideally want to keep it at or above 4 materials at all times. This is also another trap card we can set off of Layer 19's effect, giving us a way to insulate our plays, or flat out remove our opponents. And you don't even have to go through the whole process of summoning Magnus either. The negation just needs you to have an on-theme Xyz monster, and the banish can even be accomplished by fielding Tyrant Brutus. And we've already gone over how easy it is to summon that guy. Archetypal counter traps are nothing new, but like with field spells, they do help to flesh out the identity of the theme that they're attached to, because it's how the card negates that sets it apart, and this does the job swimmingly. That being said, I think it's very funny how none of this mentioned Neo Super Quantal Mech Beast Blaster Magnus, so I guess Lusterex was a bit of a downgrade? Overall, these are some very flavorful cards that really help to expand the capabilities of a fan favorite theme. It's basically the definition of a crowd pleaser, especially since we didn't lean too far into the cash tier a bit. A Super Quants already have an annoying Towers monster to deal with as it is. I hesitate to think of what'll happen if they also started locking out zones. With the release of Morgana, the Witch of Eyes, it became clear that the Morganite cards were part of the Sinful Spoil storyline the whole time. Not that it meant much, considering they didn't confirm any of this until after the story was wrapped up, and they didn't factor into any of the plot points from the story at all. They haven't even been mentioned in supplemental materials like Jump Magazine. Yet. So to help smooth things over, Harry, the ominous benefactor, has decided to add some cards that not only play into the gimmicks of the different Morganites that we have so far, but also ties them to distinct monsters. Let's take a look. Dia the Disciplined is a level 2 light spellcaster monster with 0 attack and defense. You contribute this card you control and discard 1 card to add 2 Morganite cards from your deck to your hand. Also, you can't activate monster effects in the hand for the rest of the duel. If this card is in your grave, you can target a Morganite spell in your graveyard, banish both it and this card, and if you do, send a Morganite spell from your hand or deck to the grave, letting you gain immediate access to their grave effects, which can range from another Morganite search to keeping your opponent from responding to your normal summons, to even replacing dead Morganites in your hand with a fresh draw. But the important thing about Dia here is that they search you Morganite cards, and while in the base game this only means you'll be searching out the established spells, we'll also be able to grab all kinds of cards that we're going to be introducing later on in this section. It's basically got everything you need to dole out whatever kind of disciplinary action you see fit. Regina of the Treacherous Treasures is a level 10 Earth Beast monster with 3000 attack and defense that is always treated as a Morganite card. When this card is normal summoned, destroy all spell and trap cards your opponent controls. It deals piercing battle damage, and as a quick effect, you can discard a Morganite spell or return a Morganite spell from your banishment to the graveyard to shuffle 1 monster your opponent controls into the deck. Now, while Regina's stat line might make you think this is Stealth Nem Lyria support, locking the effect behind a normal summoning it helps to keep this splash ability in check, which is pretty good considering normal summoning this comes with a Harpy's Feather Duster. Instead, this is meant to accentuate the power of our Morganites. Guilt Gripping makes it so you don't have to tribute summon for this, and a Succumbing Song not only gives it a double attack on monsters, the double damage you gain complements the piercing exceedingly well. And if that wasn't enough, it's also walking interaction, recycling your banished Morganites to use their grave effects again while batting away monsters that would threaten it. It's a pretty imposing beast, but don't plan on penning it anytime soon. I hear it has a thing against hands. Moa of the Gruesome Gifts is a level 10 Wind-Winged Beast monster with 3000 attack and defense, and is always treated as a Morganite card. When this card is normal summoned, you can send a Morganite card from your deck to the grave, and while this card is face up on the field, apply all the following effects based on the combined number of Morganite spells in your grave or banishment. With 3 or more, Morganite cards you control can't be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. With 5 or more, your opponent can't activate monster effects in the hand, and with 7 or more, you contribute this card to special summon a monster from your deck or extra deck. This is just mean. Removing your ability to activate monster effects in the hand is a curse you take on in exchange for the awesome power the stones provide. But now you can apply that same restriction to your opponent if you play into the gimmick enough. And it even protects your Morganites from effect destruction as well, making it that much harder to interact with. Now, it doesn't utilize the power of Succumbing Song as well as Regina does, but because we have 2 of these beasties, it means we can search both of them with Dia and normal summon both of them if we have Guilt Gripping and Time Tearing active. Or heck, even if it's just Guilt Gripping, normal summoning this gets Succumbing Song into the grave, which can then search you that Time Tearing. And yeah, it also gives you access to anything in your main or extra deck that doesn't have a summon restriction. And there are some goofy candidates for that, but I'll leave the worst possible ones for you to summon up to your own heinous imaginations. These are some fantastically powerful cards for the Morganite crew to be sure. However, we could always use a few more of them. Thorned Queen's Decree is a continuous trap card that is always treated as a Morganite card. Activate this card by paying 6,000 life points, and while face up on the field, neither player can special summon monsters from the hand. Also, both players must set spell cards before activating them and cannot activate them until their next turn after setting them. Also destroy this card if you don't have a Morganite spell in your grave and or banishment. Like how Guilt Gripping allows us to deploy our previous monsters without tributing for them, it also lets us activate this card and our next one without having having to immediately lose to any kind of direct attack. And boy howdy is it mean. It's basically an anti-spell fragrance with a less powerful summon limit stapled onto it. This ties back to Diabelle's, which is the second callback to the original Sin Keeper we've had this episode, mimicking her own effect to force our opponents to set their spell and trap cards before activating them. Though this card does shut off her own special summon from a hand effect, so it's a bit of a double-edged sword. And if this card becomes active while Moa has the Morganite protection effect up, then it transforms from a problem into a problem you're gonna have a tough time removing. Honestly, there are just no fair cards in this game with the word decree in them. Good grief. Crimson Thistles is a counter trap card that is always treated as a Morganite card. When any number of monsters would be summoned or a spell or trap card is activated, pay 6,000 life points to negate the summon or activation, and if you do, destroy that card. If this card is in your grave, you can shuffle 2 Morganite cards from your grave or banishment into the deck except Crimson Thistles to set this card to your field, but banish it when it leaves the field. So we've got a themed Solemn Judgment that can reset itself and recycle our Morganites. Thankfully, even though this card is a Morganite as well, it specifically calls out that you can't recycle this one. On top of the fact that Regina can only return banished Morganite spells to the graveyard for their shuffle effect. Which means on theme we don't have a way to recycle Crimson Thistles, aside from its own effect, which is good because otherwise we'd have a big problem on our hands. Well, at least our opponent would. But even without an infinite amount of recursion, the amount that we have now is still pretty powerful, hitting just about anything short of monster effects, and that's what the Solemn Strikes we have in the deck are for, which will also be free. So no matter what our opponent is playing, Crimson Thistles will ensure that we're always a thorn in their side. In conclusion, these make for some pretty slick support cards for Morganites, giving them an actual shell to play into, even if they work as supplemental cards just as well. Honestly, I'm curious to see if the designers are thinking anything along the same lines, so keep an eye out in 4 years when the devs decide to tap back into the Sinful Spoils lore to sell you more cardboard. Folks, I am not immune to burger propaganda. When I see that juicy meat all up in those buns, I just go feral. So when the one who watches posted new Nouvelles support, well, what was I supposed to do? It also helps that it's got a pretty rad concept. Take a look. Cosmo Burger is a level 6 Dark Warrior ritual pendulum monster with 2000 attack, 1850 defense, and a scale of 3. As a spell card, once per turn you can shuffle a Nouvelles or Cosmo Burger pendulum monster from your extra deck into your deck to add a recipe ritual spell from your deck or graveyard to your hand. As a monster, it can be ritual summoned with all new Burger Recipe. When it destroys an opponent's monster by battle, banish that monster, then this card gains attack equal to that monster's level, rank, or link rating times 200. And that's a permanent boost. That makes it a pretty solid monster to battle with, cleaning up monsters that might have detrimental graveyard effects. But as a pendulum scale, it's fantastic. The only real downside is that it lacks the strong scales of the chefs, as well as the ability to bounce between them and the field over time. At least, inherently. But the effect is great for keeping your engine humming during the long game, ensuring that you'll always have a recipe ritual spell to summon out your most fearsome foodies. Truly, Cosmo Burger is out of this world. And speaking of the ritual spell it comes from, all new Burger Recipe is a ritual spell card that you can use to ritual summon any Nouvelles or Burger monster from your hand or Pendulum Zone. You must also tribute monsters from your hand or field whose total levels equal or exceed the level of the ritual monster you ritual summon. Then, if you ritual summoned a Burger monster, you can apply the following effect. Burger monsters you control can attack twice during each battle phase this turn. Combine that with Cosmo Burger's attack gaining effect, and you'll end up with a hand witch that can handle just about any opponent. You can even scoop this up with Cosmo's pendulum effect before ritual summoning it right from the scales. It's also a funny complement to Angry Burger. All new recipe makes you very aggressive, while Angry forces your opponent to be aggressive. Oh, and speaking of which, the added attacks means you have more chances to trigger the evolution of Polteis and Foie Glacea. It focuses a lot more on the burger side of things than the Nouvelle, to be sure, but that's honestly a welcome change of pace. Looks like burgers are back on the menu. The crafty critic who criticizes Cosmo Burgers is a level 3 Dark Fiend monster with 800 attack and 1200 defense that is always treated as a Nouvelles card. When a Nouvelles or Burger monster, except a copy of this card, is summoned, declares an attack, or activates its effects, add a critic counter to this card. And Nouvelles and Burger monsters you control gain 100 attack and defense for each critic counter on the field. Also, during your main phase, you can ritual summon a Nouvelles or Burger ritual monster from your hand or Pendulum Zone by removing critic counters from anywhere on the field equal to the level of the monster you ritual summon. And you won't need very many counters either, because you usually want to start off with summoning the lower leveled ones to move up from there. However, because this card is treated as a Nouvelles card, this does activate the bonus effects of the cards that check for being summoned by on-theme monsters, something that is normally only possible via the theme's level up mechanic. So if you get 6 or more, you can totally just drop Bagrel from your hand, negate your opponent's entire face-up field, back row included, and then get the bonus effect where you Nibiru their entire monster lineup. Also, I'm kind of a fan of the meta narrative that's going on here. Normally, critics are positioned as the enemies in relation to art and artists when it comes to these kinds of stories, but here, the more critic counters you have, presumably a representation of the critic's feedback, experiences, and articles, the Nouvelles are actually bolstered by this, as they use that information to grow and change. It's a pretty compelling interaction. I'm not sure if it was intended, but it gets an A+ from me all the same. Crafty Critic's Crafty Cuisine Extra Large Serving is a continuous spell card and won't face up on the field. When a Nouvelles or Burger monster is summoned, declares an attack, or activates its effect, add a critic counter to this card. And Nouvelles and Burger monsters you control gain attack equal to the number of critic counters on the field times 100. This is, effectively, the same effect found on Monster Critic. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because this does double the amount of power each counter gives. And the redundancy means that if you lose one, you don't lose the entire benefit if either of them gets sniped. That being said, I don't have anything to add that wasn't previously mentioned, so while the serving is extra large, this paragraph won't be. Crafty Critic's Crafty Cuisine, the Secret Menu, is a quick play spell card that special summons a Burger or Nouvelles monster from your deck, hand, or grave. During either player's end phase, you can banish this card from your grave to add a recipe card from your deck, grave, or banishment to your hand. This card is simply fantastic and helps you get the cards you need when you need them. Normally, Culinary Confrontation is how you get the Pendulum monsters into rotation to get their on-summon effects. And you can still do that, as getting a free monster for your opponent is actually pretty crucial to our plans. This just gives us another way to do so. Heck, it can even bring back properly summoned rituals from our graveyard too, which is great since they have effects that trigger on special summoning, not just ritual summoning. And then, it also gets you back your recipe cards, though you do have to wait a bit of time before the card comes back to you. But like, you are sitting down at a fancy restaurant, you've got to have at least a little bit of patience while the team is cooking. In conclusion, while I feel that it mostly plays off the themes of the original Nouvelles, interacting with attacking and targeting, having pendulum monsters, and using recipe spell cards, I feel like it's a bit shallow in that regard, but it more than makes up for it with the added critic counter mechanic, giving the monsters more heft on the field while providing some fun storytelling. But I am going to hold off on giving it a star rating, since when it comes to the food world, those seem to be a little tricky. Regenesis is probably one of the most interesting of the themes we've seen recently. Their aesthetics are ethereal and cosmic, but I struggle to put my finger on anything more direct than some vague Christian motifs. It loves the number 2500, which is a recurring number across the game in general, but these cards don't necessarily seem to be a celebration of monsters with that stat line, so it's just kind of a deck that exists and has things in it, which is probably why I'm always drawn to it, like some puzzle with a solution I can't quite wrap my head around. I'm not sure what Millennia's stance on them is, but they must be invested enough to cook up this new support. Anointed of the Regenesis is a level 4 Earth Illusion monster with 2500 attack and defense that can't attack and is destroyed during the end of the turn it's normal or special summoned. This card is unaffected by other cards' effects except other Regenesis card effects, and when this card is normal or special summoned, send a Regenesis card from your deck to your grave to add a Regenesis card from your deck to your hand. Then you can reveal a Regenesis Lord, Regenesis Demiurge, or a Regenesis Judge in your hand to add a monster with 2500 attack or defense from your deck to your hand. The card is basically asking you to make sure that first search is for one of those 3 named monsters, because then it'll get you a whole other monster. And it doesn't even have to be on theme, so long as it holds to the 2500 point gimmick. This is pretty much the definition of a starter card. All the other Regenesis monsters in the game are high enough level where you can't go around normal summoning them. You generally have to use their own effect to do so, which requires jumping through a couple hoops. Even Archfiend, which is the monster that'd usually start things off, can end up as a bum card in your hand and just be stuck there. Anointed, on the other hand, can be normal summoned and does give you a 2500 monster to look for. though because a normal summonable 2500 point monster would be patently absurd, the right choice was to make it so it couldn't attack, and that it only sticks around for a short while. The only real drawback here that I can think of is that because this is a trigger effect on summon, if you only summon it during your own turn, any Regenesis monster you send to the grave with its search effect won't trigger during the end phase. So we'll have to keep an eye on methods that we can use to put Anointed onto the board during our opponent's turn, the most common of which will likely be the on-theme Regenesis code. Despite it being a little clunky, I feel like this would be an auto-include in every version of the deck to help ensure you can mobilize your threats and get on your opponent's nerves. Now that's what I call being anointed. Regenesis Judge is a level 9 light zombie monster with 2500 attack and defense, and must be special summoned by banishing a monster from your graveyard with 2500 attack and or defense, and you can only do this once per turn. If this card is special summoned, you can shuffle all Regenesis spell and trap cards from your grave and banishment into your deck to draw a card for every 2 cards shuffled by this effect. And if you would send a Regenesis card you control from your hand to the graveyard, or tribute a Regenesis monster to activate a Regenesis card's effect, you can send a Regenesis card from your deck, or a monster from your extra deck with 2500 attack and or defense to the graveyard instead. Hey, that's a pretty splendid effect. Being able to substitute costs is usually a great way to break parity with your opponent, and in this case, we don't just have to settle for recycling our Regenesis monsters, we can actually get new ones into the grave from the deck to bolster our forces, or send something from the extra deck to get some value. I could think of a few dragons associated with Albaz that have that particular stat line that would love to trigger some grave effects during the end phase. It's also another way to get a 2500 attack monster onto the board without necessarily needing to have your field set up, which I think means this would be a pretty strong include if it was printed today, judging from those effects. Regenesis Megiddo is a level 9 Dark Pyro monster with 2500 attack and defense, and must be special summoned from your hand to your opponent's field by attributing up to 3 monsters they control, with a minimum of 2. And you can only special summon this card once per turn this way. And you can only special summon Regenesis monsters the turn you special summon Regenesis Megiddo. While you control this monster you don't own, and your opponent controls a Regenesis monster, you can't activate the effects of monsters with 2500 attack and or defense or lower. That's right, we've got ourselves a kaiju that also acts as a floodgate. At least for monsters that have a lower attack or defense value, which, to be fair, should still handle a lot. Even monsters with big attack stats might not necessarily have a big enough butt to overcome the threshold. Though, because it stands in the way of your opponent's life points, it's a floodgate that can't stick around forever, to say nothing of its utility as link material. And it's a good thing we have that summon restriction tacked on there too, otherwise Chaotic Elements would be going through one hell of a price spike, and the last thing I need is for cards related to Ashen and or Tistina to get any kind of attention. Regenesis Estrus is a quick play spell card that targets up to 1 each of a Regenesis normal spell, quick play spell, normal trap, and continuous trap cards with different names in your grave and or banishment, and shuffles them into the deck. And if you do, apply the following effects in sequence based on the number of cards shuffled into the deck by this effect. For 2 or more, Regenesis monsters you control can't be destroyed or banished until the next end phase. For 3 or more, your opponent flips all monsters they control face down, then they must send monsters they can't flip face down to the grave. And for 4, you can special summon a Regenesis Lord and Regenesis Demiurge from your deck, grave, and or banishment, ignoring summoning conditions. So the more of your on-theme support that you play, the better benefits that you get. The protection is nice, and having Destructive Daruma Karma Cannon on a spell card is positively ludicrous. And then if you add the summon of both the theme's established boss monsters, and I can hardly imagine you'd be able to lose the game from that position. We're talking about getting another Regenesis spell or trap card and bouncing a few monsters, tied to what will be a 5k beater and a debuffer that takes 2500 attack away from each of your opponent's monsters. This takes some setup, but I'd hazard a guess and say it might be worth your while, especially since you're probably going to be playing all those kinds of cards anyway. It's like the Cosmos' most messed up punch card, because instead of exchanging a fully punched one for a free small frozen yogurt, you're getting 2 gigantic elder deities, which, I guess to be fair, isn't a bad deal. Regenesis Returner is a Link 4 light Cyberse monster with 2500 attack, requiring 4 Regenesis monsters as material. You can only control a single copy of it, and you can only special summon copies of it once per turn. This monster gains the effects of all other Regenesis monsters that it points to, and if this card is link summoned to the extra monster zone, special summon as many Regenesis monsters as possible from your grave and or banishment to zones this card points to. If this card is in the grave or banishment, as a quick effect, you can banish 4 Regenesis monsters in the grave to special summon this card to the extra monster zone. So thankfully we can ensure that Returner will be able to soak up all those delicious effects. I'd be curious to see if they ever print an effect like this into the actual game where you can put a monster in the EMZ that was not summoned from the extra deck, but I think this is a cool test run. The initial buy-in does seem steep, and it super is, but thankfully you get most of what you put into it back onto the field by summoning 3 monsters. Well, you can summon up to 4 if you give your opponent one, but with the help of Demiurge, it's probably going to be a 0 attack monster, so at least we get a sick way to deal damage to our opponent if we can set them up. Now, I'm not the biggest Regenesis player, I'm not sure what a standard end board looks like, especially with the help of all these custom cards, but it seems to me like if you've got 4 Regenesis monsters in rotation, you've got the game pretty much locked up from there. A Link monster that can copy their effects doesn't seem necessary, though having a last-ditch body you can throw out if you get wiped is a nice little function, letting it Returner with a vengeance. And that's all the custom card stuff I'll be covering this month, at least in this video. I've still got a slew of cards to cover that I couldn't possibly fit in here, so be sure to check out my channel on September 5th to see the rest of what my community has cooked up. For more details on when it'll go live, be sure to check out my Discord down below for more details, and you can even post custom cards of your own if you're so inclined. I hope you'll all come on by to celebrate the community's creativity, and now, it's time to thank all the people who helped make all this possible. Today's episode is brought to you by Dragon Shield. Get the sleeves as strong as dragon scales and save 5% on your order by using the coupon code GoldenNova at checkout while helping out the channel. It was also brought to you by my lovely patrons, including this month's illustrious Quasar Commander, Upstairs Media, Nebula Navigator's 3rd Dynasty, Ada Basilisk, Adam Zajdel, Ancient Wizard, Andrew Newman, Battle Axe, Charlie Mercury, Chibi Gohan, Christopher Fuss, Clockswork, Comrade Eric, Frankie, Garland Chaos, Green Knight, Great Big Pillock, Groog, Hair Bear, Harry the Ominous Benefactor, Iron Zero, Iskander 711, Carp, Marion Jamesy Picata, Meme King, Millennia Asta, Muse Clark, Neon Yaminair, Orozco 09096, Panther J, Bat Boos, Rebel King Lucifer, Red Eyes Jackalow, RJ the Jank Monarch, Sonic 21 Blast, The Critic of Innocence, Thievery Coast, and the Wizard Moose, Cosmic Crusaders Ally Vatnia, Animasta, and Thorak, A Random Pup, Blade Runner 1034, Blitzwolf, Brandon Guzman, Jazz Ghost, Christopher Fuss, again, Chris B, Cool Trainer Dark, Dr. Entity RIP, Eki Bullock, Eva Padilla, Herbal D, Julian Marquez, Kale the Dragon, Lobomaru02, Manga Pages, Natiel Lee Alexander, Not Al Gore, Obsidian, Pombo, Rhyme Kairos, Rogue Wolf, Shizuki Nijimura, Simic Toadstool, Cernite JCB, Sphilia, Stepfin Huntsman, The Legendary Raven, The Queen of Time, The Gene, Tiger X2476, Tristan O'Meara, and Zal Dreka, as well as all the lovely Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. If you'd like to help me in my journey to cover all of Yu-Gi-Oh's archetypes, get my videos early, be a part of these credits and other awesome perks, it would mean the world to me if you would check out the link to my Patreon in the description or consider joining as a YouTube member. And if you want to see all of the new cards that we actually got in Duelist Advance, I've got some videos right here that go over all of the support for archetypes we've already talked about. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.